Yeah, man.
Antetokounmpo has it. Top to Butler. Up and in. Rises, fires, knocks it down. And the Miami Heat become the sixth in NBA history to
A disappointment. This game was nothing but a disappointment. The Milwaukee Bucks would lose to the Miami Heat in 5 games. Mind you, they were the 1 seed, losing to an 8 seed. You could argue this is one of the biggest upsets in NBA history. You could also argue this series made Giannis look really bad, and a lot of people started to doubt his greatness, asking, is he an overrated player in the NBA? In fact, some people are saying that he's not as good as people proclaimed him to be. They claimed his 2021 ring was an overrated ring and he didn't actually deserve it. After the game, Giannis would do a press conference where a question was asked and Giannis would answer in a very interesting way.
You asked me the same question last year, Eric. Okay, do you get the promotion every year on your job? No, right? So every year you work is a failure. Yes or no? No. There's no failure in sports. You know, there's good days, bad days. Some days you are able to be successful, some days you're not.
Despite the memes that were made online about what Giannis said, he's absolutely right. And this season, I think those steps to success that he's been building on for the past couple of years, even after the championship, I believe Giannis is going to show everyone this season that he is the best player in the world and there's no debate. This year, Giannis is going to prove his dominance. He's going to have his revenge and prove to the NBA world he is still the best player in the game and there's no debate. Now, first, I want to go back to that Miami Heat series because a lot happened in that series that some people typically don't talk about. In theory, this was supposed to be an easy series win for the Bucks. The Bucks were one of the best teams in the NBA. Giannis was looking like he was going to dominate this year, and the East was pretty wide open compared to the West. Now, some people predicted that Miami was going to possibly have an upset because they're one of those teams that you don't know how to play against. They're very interesting to play. Sometimes they look like a really good team, a team that can make a finals run, and then there's moments where you question how they even got to this spot. I think a lot of people forget that Miami lost their first play-in game and they barely made the playoffs. In the play-in game, they lost to, and I am not joking, the most statistically mid team in the NBA this season. Now, when I saw that, I was in complete disbelief. I thought there was no way they were going to lose that game. Yeah, I still had a weird feeling in my body when I found out they were the 8th seed confirmed that they had a fighting chance to maybe beat the Bucks or the Celtics, because my original prediction was they were going to beat the Celtics in the first round because I expected them to be the 7th seed. Now, underdog stories are cute, but they don't usually happen. That's why they're called an underdog. But already in the first game, something happened that was catastrophic for the Milwaukee Bucks.
Antetokounmpo takes it right down and drives into Love. And Giannis is hurt. And Giannis, I think he's holding them back.
It was this moment right here that we should have known Milwaukee was not going to win the series. Now, some of you might say, oh, but the Bucks were down by 12. Well, do you not realize basketball is a game of runs? Especially in the first quarter, like that game could have definitely flipped at any point. After game 1, people questioned whether or not Milwaukee even had a fighting chance. Mind you, they came into the series as by far the favorite to win. But now things are not looking like that anymore. Giannis would miss games 2 and 3, and surprisingly in game 2, the Bucks would actually win, and people were convinced they still had a fighting chance. However, things from there took a very bad turn as the Bucks would go down 3-1. I mean, to game 5, some people thought that the Bucks actually had a chance to come back down from 3-1, and I mean, Giannis was back to playing even though he was clearly not the same at all. Despite Chris Middleton being injured for a majority of the season, he actually played pretty solid in the playoffs. He looked like classic Chris Middleton. But Jrue Holiday, on the other hand, was not so good. The Bucks would go into game 5, and it would actually be a pretty great game. Towards the end of the game, the Bucks were up by 2, and all they had to do was stop the Heat from scoring with little time left on the clock, and they were going to move on to a game 6. But of course, Mr. Playoff Jimmy had to do this.
Over the top to Butler. Up and in. Jimmy Butler.
I think overtime of this game represented how the Bucks were at that time. They were depleted, they were not good, and overall they were just defeated as a whole. Now, the funny part is when I look at this series and I'm looking at who should we blame or who should we look at and say they're the reason why this team lost, I'm not looking at Giannis. Giannis did not play the way he usually does, but that's probably because he had a broken ass. Shout out to SpongeBob. We could look at the coaching, we could look at the rotation being a joke, we could look at Jrue Holiday playing like absolute garbage. But I don't think think it's fair for anyone to say that this series was 100% Giannis's fault. I do think he had his moments here and there, but again, he was hobbled. That man should not have returned to play. But of course, he's the face of the team. Matter of fact, he's low-key the face of the city. I mean, not to disrespect Milwaukee, but what the fuck goes on Milwaukee? Absolutely nothing. Now, the funny part of this entire thing is that this isn't the first time that Giannis has been destroyed by the media before. In fact, it seems like for his whole career, the media has constantly been against him, even when he thrives. Even in his 2021 finals run, people still had things to say about him. Like, do you remember that time where they were saying that Chris Middleton was the Batman of this team? Basically implying that Giannis was second to Chris Middleton, which if you can't tell is a stupid claim. Even after Giannis would go on to win the finals in a matchup where people didn't really favor them, they thought the Suns were the best team, which I mean they were, but they weren't. I hate it here, guys. But even after the Bucks won the finals, they still got loads of disrespect, including to Giannis. Now there was that short period of time where people thought he was the best player in the league, but I feel like we do that to every single player when they win the finals. No disrespect to Nikola Jokic, but only now are people starting to call him the best player in the world because he just won a championship ring. They did it to Giannis in 2021, Curry in 2022, Jokic in 2023. Fuck it, they did it to Kawhi when he won in Toronto. But the thing is, I've called Giannis the best player in the world for years, and I'm gonna stand on that. As great of a player as Nikola Jokic is, Giannis is better than Jokic in most things, and there's things Jokic just can't do that Giannis can. Now coming into the season, I think Giannis has a lot to prove to not only himself, but to everyone else. There are people saying that Giannis is an overrated player. They think that 2021 ring basically just overvalued him as a player. However, I think Giannis this season is going to have his best season that he's had in quite some time. Now I don't know if he's going to be in the MVP running because the MVP these past couple years have been kind of weird, but I do think Giannis wants his revenge this season. I think Giannis wants to show people that he is still the best player in the world. The good news for him is that they got rid of Mike Bud Light. They got rid of one of the worst coaches in the NBA. I know people are like, oh, he was a great coach. The Bucks were always in it in the playoffs. If you watch the games, you would realize how bad of a coach Mike Budenholzer was and how he was holding these guys from possibly doing well. We got a new coach in Adrian Griffin, so I do think the Bucks are definitely going to have a better season. I think it might take a little bit of a time to adjust, but I do think Giannis is coming out for a breakout year. Now, that interview we talked about earlier is very prominent to what I'm talking about in this video, because like I said, Giannis, he wants his revenge. I believe he's going to have a revenge tour this year. Giannis is right. There's no failure, only steps to success. And well, Giannis has been building those building blocks to build a championship winning team, which he did in 2021, but I think he can do again in 2023. I said it earlier, the East is wide open. There's not that much good competition in the East, at least real competition. Now, don't get me wrong, if he does somehow make it to the finals, he's gonna have to play a very tough team in the West. Now, that could be the Nuggets or the Suns or the Grizzlies, I'm not entirely sure. But something that I do know is that Giannis this season is coming for blood. He's coming for revenge because of all the disrespect that he's been dealing with for years. And especially this last season, I think it was the final straw for him. I think getting a brand new coach is the perfect culture shift that you can have for a team like the Bucks. The thing is, the Bucks are never a bad team. They're always a good team, but they just fail right when it matters most. But this season, I expect things to change. I think the mentality of Giannis is going to be different. I think the culture of the overall team is going to change because Giannis has already said it himself in these interviews, saying that he wants the culture to change. He already threatened to leave the Bucks if things do not go well this season. Do I think Giannis is just talking to maybe try to get another star player or just to, I don't know, threaten the organization? No, I think he's completely serious. Giannis wants to be one of the greatest players of all time. That is a fact, and I think he has the potential to do that. However, I know he wants to stay in Milwaukee, but if they can't provide him the tools, if people around the organization and around the team are not going to commit, then why should Giannis? So with all that being said, with the culture change, with the way the media dragged his name after he gave it everything he had in the final series of the year, with the Bucks in a championship window that could close at any moment, I think Giannis in his mind has a list of opponents that he wants to dominate this year and prove to everyone that he is better than them. And it all starts on October 30th in Milwaukee to play the Heat.